you should have all of those outlets protected. Just think when you're going over there to go fill up your fountain because the water evaporated or whatever it is, maybe the pump went bad. So now that whole device there is energized, but you don't have GFCI. If that pump was damaged and it failed, and now that water in there is energized, the GFCI would have shut it off immediately. But if you go over there and you go to fill up your fountain or you touch something, you can get a good electric shock without having this kind of protection. Well, so this is one of the things that a lot of people are like, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to talk about GFCIs today. Ground fault circuit interrupter is what GFCI stands for. Everybody's used to seeing these things. Maybe the buttons might not be red and black. Sometimes the buttons are just white, or sometimes they're other random colors. But the idea behind these outlets, these are safety devices that are installed in pretty much every home nowadays in multiple locations, right? Even more so now today than they were before. And these have been required in certain increments over the years, right? So I believe it's 1995, they started to be required in all kitchens. Either the 70s or the 60s, they started to be required at the exterior and in bathrooms in the home. And then there was another point at which they started to be required, underneath sinks and for all kinds of different outlets. So the idea behind these outlets, circuit breakers in a panel, the device that actually cuts off power if there's too much amperage draw from a circuit in your home. Every outlet and every device in your home is connected to circuit breakers in your main panel. So the idea behind circuit breakers is circuit breakers are meant to protect the circuit from overcurrent. So if you have too many things pulling amperage from that circuit, it's designed to cut off the power if there's too much amperage being drawn. So for example, if you have a toaster on your counter and you also have a coffee maker and a couple of other things, and you turn them all on at the same time and they're hooked up to the same circuit, you're going to draw more amperage than that circuit is designed to allow. The wires are only designed to carry a certain amount of amperage, and that breaker is only designed to allow that certain amount of amperage to come through. So if you didn't have circuit breakers, then you would overload those wires. They would most likely catch on fire, and then you'd have problems with that. So that's the idea behind circuit breakers. Now, GFCIs are a type of circuit interrupter in a way as well, but the idea behind this is the breakers are designed, again, to protect against over amperage current draw. GFCI are meant to protect you against ground faults. And so anything you have plugged into these, if you happen to be near water, if you happen to be, in the bathroom, exterior, garage, whatever it is, with this type of outlet, if you happen to somehow cause a ground fault, or basically you are the thing that now grounds this circuit out, whether or not you drop something in a sink or maybe you're spraying something down and there's a ground fault there, this outlet is going to shut off the power in milliseconds, as opposed to the circuit breaker, which may not shut the power off quickly at all. You're going to get a good jolt, a shock, electrocution, which could kill you. So the idea behind these outlets is it's going to protect the user that's in this area, whatever you have plugged into these outlets, and it's going to protect you from getting a dose of a potentially fatal electric shock. And so the reason why they're suggested or required now at all areas in bathrooms, kitchens, garages, exterior outlets, these are all areas where you're typically going to have water nearby, or you're going to have a possibility of having a ground fault. And so having this there, that's why it's important. Now, just like everything else, these have a lifespan. They don't last forever. And most of the time, no one tests these until I come around and I test them, because that's what we do during our home inspection. Just like smoke detectors, just like anything else in your home, it has a lifespan. And when it's just sitting there for years, nobody's using it, nothing happens, it's not going to last forever. And so that you have this protection, so that you have this safety device in place, you should test these things monthly, just like you should test your smoke detectors to make sure they're functioning.
How would you test these to people that don't know?
You can test it right on the front of the device itself. You can press the test and reset buttons. I like the idea of using an actual GFCI tester, which is a device that you can purchase from Home Depot, your local Lowe's, whatever it may be. They're about, $10, $15, and you can plug it into any outlet. And the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that even though you don't see one of these outlets right here in front of you at your location, that doesn't mean that the circuit isn't GFCI protected. A lot of newer homes, especially, they have breakers in the panel that are GFCI protected. So not only are you protecting that one outlet, in this case, in the bathroom, right? You're protecting everything on that entire circuit all the way back to the panel. So having a tester that you can actually purchase from Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever it is, and press the button and plug it in, that's what we use as home inspectors to test the circuits. If you don't have one of these in your bathroom, kitchen, that doesn't mean that there isn't one somewhere else that's protecting it. These outlets actually have an input and an output connection on the back that will protect other things that are connected to it as well. So for example, if every one of your outlets at the exterior of your house don't have one of these installed, a lot of times homes that were built in the 80s and 90s have one of these in the garage that protects all of your exterior outlets. Or if you have one in your bathroom and there isn't one in every bathroom, that one in that one bathroom will most likely protect all of the bathrooms in your home. But the only way to fully know that is to have one of those little testers to try it out. I absolutely recommend doing that, as a homeowner, to check your outlets to make sure they're functional. And not only that, if you buy a home that's older, and we talk about this during a home inspection, or even if you hear about it on the internet, whatever else it may be, your home's older, we say, oh, it's grandfathered in because it wasn't required at the time, so you don't have to have them. That doesn't mean that it's not important to have them. It's a safety device, and they're installed nowadays on all of these newer homes for a reason. And it's very important to have these installed in all of those same locations that I mentioned. So around your kitchen area, anywhere within 6 feet of water, so near your sinks, in your bathrooms, any of your bathroom receptacles should be GFCI protected. Any of your exterior outlets should also be GFCI protected, especially, you have a fountain that's on your patio or whatever else it may be. You should have all of those outlets protected. Just think when you're going over there to go fill up your fountain because the water evaporated or whatever it is, maybe the pump went bad. So now that whole device there is energized, but you don't have GFCI. If that pump was damaged and it failed, and now that water in there is energized, the GFCI would have shut it off immediately. But if you go over there and you go to fill up your fountain or you touch something, you can get a good electric shock without having this kind of protection. So again, very important. These outlets are only about $15 or $20. As a homeowner, if you feel inclined, it's definitely something that's doable. Obviously always be safe, shut off the power before doing any kind of upgrades like this. It's definitely important. But if you don't feel safe doing it, have an electrician do it, but it's still definitely a good idea to have these things installed.
So question, it says ground fault circuit interrupter. What if your home was built in like the 50s or 60s where there is no actual ground connector going to your outlets because there's only those two prongs?
So these outlets can be used without what's called an earth ground or an equipment ground. You can use these outlets and they will provide some bit of protection, but it's always better to have them installed with an actual earth ground. And so if you don't have grounds in your home and you're going to install some of these, I would absolutely suggest adding a ground to those circuits. It's a little bit more complicated when you run into that because then you have to have an electrician run a new line, and you have to have either a ground rod installed or you want to have it strapped to a plumbing pipe or something like that. They work better in the case of having an equipment ground. They still will provide some protection if you don't have an equipment ground.
Good to know, because we work with a lot of homes that are older that don't have that ground source directly that's shown in this picture. That's one of the questions that I get is, why am I going to install something like this when my house don't really have a ground and I don't have the budget to have an electrician come out and install grounds to my whole house?
Well, think about it this way. I know a lot of people mention that they say the same thing. I don't have a budget to do this, and this. You have to think about it. When these things are brought up during an inspection and you think, okay, well, I'm going to get a credit and I'll do these later, or I'm just going to buy it as is, so I'll do it later. Most of the time, you're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. And then you're going to go sell your house later and then none of that stuff's done right. Think about it this way. When we talk about, again, smoke detectors that are older, we say that they're older and that they should be replaced for a reason. House fires are a real situation that happen all the time. Electrocutions and deaths from electrocutions happen all the time. So these things that we talk about, it's a suggestion and it's recommended, but it's something that should definitely be done. And you really should think about these things. Yeah, you know what? That baseboard over there is a little worn. That's something you can get to later. That's not a big deal. But when it comes to some of these other safety recommendations that we're making, you should really heed those warnings and think about it because it could save your life.
I agree. Check your GFCIs, people.
And your smoke detectors.
Yes, and your smoke detectors. But that's it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will catch you guys next time, all right? Peace out now.